Topic 9, Lesson 7, Fractions in Simplest Form. Today you will identify fractions that are in simplest form and find the simplest form of a fraction. Okay, so let's look at this story problem here to learn about fractions in simplest form. It says, how can you write a fraction in simplest form? A stained glass window has 20 panes. Out of 20 sections, 12 are yellow, so 12/20ths of the panes are yellow. Notice how the picture also shows that 3/5 are yellow. So clearly we can see 4, 8, 12, so 12 out of 20. But if you see it in a different way, I can also see that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 groups there, and 1, 4, 8, 12, or 1, 2, 3, 3 out of 5 groups, okay, are yellow, like they already said. Okay, so how does this relate to simplest form, you might wonder? Let's look at the top of your next page here, where it says a fraction is in simplest form when its numerator and denominator have no common factor other than 1. So 3/5, I could not divide that any further besides dividing it by, I couldn't divide by 3 because I can't do 5 divided by 3. That would not work. But the only thing I can do here is 1 over 1, and I would still get 3/5. So if it's if I can't do anything other than 1, then it's in simplest form. Can't divide anything further than 1. Okay, so in order to find simplest form, instead of drawing a picture every time, the shortcut here is showing that you can divide by common factors. So I know 2 goes into both 12 and 20 to get 6/10, but 6/10 can still be divided further. I can still divide by 2 halves to get 3/5. But I'm noticing that 12/20ths, I can't divide by 12, can't divide by 10, something they have in common, 6, a 5, 4. So I could divide by 4/4. So instead of dividing by 2 twice, I could just do that, and that gives me the 3/5. Okay, and I can't get any lower than that. It can't be broken into any smaller pieces. In the previous lesson, you learned about greatest common factor, and it says, how can you use greatest common factor to find the simplest form? Okay, so let's look at this story problem. It says, there are 36 students in a 5th grade class. 27 will go to the math competition. What is the simplest form of the fraction of the class going to the competition? Okay, so obviously I know it's 27/36. Oh, whoops. 27/36. Okay. But if I want to know in simplest form, okay, they give you all these choices. Okay. And the example shows how they've listed all the factors, just like we did in greatest common factor, of 27 and 36. And you'll see that 9 here is the greatest common factor. That helps me know that 9 goes into 27 and 36. And if I divide by 9/9 like they did here, okay, since it's the greatest common factor, I know then that my final fraction will be in simplest form. Okay, if I were to divide by 3/3, I could most certainly do that. I'll do that up here. And I would get 9/12, but that's not simplest form. It's just an equivalent fraction. But simplest form, it cannot be divided any further. The only thing that it's divisible by is 1 over 1, but then it's already in simplest form. Okay, so we're going to give this a try in the guided practice here. All right, so it says in 1 through 6, we are going to write each fraction in simplest form. So make sure your pencils are ready. 16/32. Okay, so I could go over here and list out all the factors, okay, of 16 and 30. That would be 1 and 16, 2 times 8 and then 4. Okay, so those are my factors. 32, we've got 1 and 32. 16. Oh, what do you know? I don't even need to go any further. 16 is going to be the greatest factor, greatest common factor, because there's nothing higher than 16 up here, and there's obviously 32 isn't a factor of 16, so I don't even need to list the rest of them. And so then I can just divide by 16/16, same in the numerator as in the denominator, and I get 1, and I get 1/2. Okay, so the simplest form of 16/32 is 1/2. It's an equivalent fraction, but it's in simplest form, and that's easier to understand. 1/2, I can easily visualize that much more or much better than 16/32. Okay, I'm going to try one more. I see 10/15 on number 6. I probably don't need to list out the factors for all of them. Some of them you'll have to, but okay, so with 10/15, I'm just rewriting it because I ran out of room. I can divide by 5, and that's something I didn't need to list out. I just know 5 goes into both of them. Okay, and that was the greatest common factor, and so I would get 2/3. And I can't divide that any further besides by 1/1, but you don't need to do that because this is the simplest form. Okay, so as you work through these, some of them, like number 3, that was just an example. You might have to list out the factors, but you want to get it in simplest form where you cannot divide any further and besides by 1. Okay, so listen for directions and to determine which problems you need to do. Put these fractions in simplest form. Best of luck.